Rektan Jankar Jamsi Chabda, Choga Dorjelo, Movigo, Pason de Bajamsi, Yelanda Husser, Lobon Yishirab Jene, Robochentun the Gornija, Kimbo, Drupunsu, Laman Gorjari, Nimare, Hila, So Jinan, Jimdanangre, Metochoyan, Chupet, Mandrachoyan, Linkisan, Suma, Beijing, Chupet in Ponto made the Provala Pe, the Yuloman and Sende, Mentumpe Jinga, Hevada, Cheparda, Zablin, Hivdeta, Nemon Tusu, Shen, Depi Gadi Pala, Long Jupe, Tumun Jamachon by
in the presence of the Supreme Vajra Master, who is the Lord of all the ocean of mandalas and all the Buddha families, and also in the presence of the noble community, the community of the noble Sangha, Loben Yeshe is offering, Loben Yeshe Rabden, Rabke, sorry. Yeshe Rabke is offering to Rinpoche $200 and to Khenpos and Drupchö and the other lamas $100 each, and also is offering 5 days of food of our meals. And so even though it is like a small flower, even though the offering is like a small flower, it is a holy offering substance. And even though the mandala seems small, it consists of 4 continents. So just like that, I visualize this small offering as a vast offering of clouds. And with that, I pray that all the people I'm connected to and all the disciples will have all their negative conditions in this lifetime pacified, all obstacles pacified, and also may there be peace and happiness in the world, and may all disease, weapons or wars and famine in this world become completely pacified, and may everyone experience well-being and happiness and joy and peace and glory in their lives and all enjoyments.
Om Aho. Tao Dzongxue, Tao Dzongxi ba de ce Tsok po dina tini namyang tawa ti yinji mo chwa ba, tawa ti yinji mo shik ba, te ma ri benda tini tawa ti ba ti gang yo nang sengbu ne rong de ri sengda nang fa ni ti na pa wong na sengda nang fa ta ba ti na pa no ti nyamnyong ge de ti na sengda nang fa che me ba re chana 내가 좀더 좋은 좀더 낭이 줘봐라 답답지 따와면 제가 항상 님말이 배세면 근데 롱다를 빨았던 거 따와 롱을 했던 데 와서 이들은 몸이 따와는데 그더니 책들이 되면 있는 파우나 이때 되는 밥 토기로래 배나 시합진 탐색에 돈나더니 나상 주면 되는 파우나더니 많이 주었던 봤더니 이제랑 게 영화상 별다서 사치고 또 무슨 우리 꼭이 프랑스 바다에 선거요래 드니 롱카시니 선거더니 랑게 양 탑랑게 뜨니 전이야 랑게 니스메 냠조가 되와 송 드리티 냠조 내 값없는 연구요래 내 샤르 하고 말하면이 니 속값 냠조가 값 첩보가 값없는 드니 연구요래 내가 삼지 탑을 뛰는 거 어깨가 탑 이렇게 되게 가면 세분 내로 문이 돼 지바데 되는 판매들이 되게 쏜 거요래. 그래서 당서 냠니스를 하고 있더니 되나 체크 뛰는 밥 참는 양 동거들은 냠냠을 뛰는 밥 맞았나? 들이 체크 뛰는 밥 봤다고 그랬더니 다시 타니는 정도 요래 그런 냠을 치라 피보용 거는 지금 시에고로 시에고 요래 그 영역들은 바바테 내제들이 곰비 냠살인죠 그리고 곰버 창초고 송한테 곰버는 따와 뛰는 배 하고서는 그 곰비 냠냠지 냠세용지 곰바 냠냠단지가 제물에 송가리 대신 디솔되고 책는 들이 곰바 냠세용을 강해 남도 죽거를 탐바라 람송고 곰바면서 람스 오 남도 죽거를 탐지만 남도 소화지에 그래 생물 소화지에 그래 소화지와 되라 우리 상양 같은 심하죠 뭐 말해서 체다는 정도 그래 들 매출 세트 맞서는데 우리 마삼스 우미야 마삼스 얼다 거리에 타죠 그래 나는 양놈 타죠 남도 속체 못 잡아가서 벤 시당치 보저로 야야나 이렇게 당대 감이 시당 남도 타지 돌게 되어 벤나 도보 벤신 로니시 섬절을 냠데 이렇게 와치 보요나 진짜로 되는 시당 잡고라 되는지 떼어서 담제 도는 거예요 라마신 생고만 대봐야 도는 거리 생고만 힘이 도는 거리 대마치 랑랑 시장에서 담제 요리 깝들이 가래들이 대답을 뉴모든 잡아 깝이 가래에서는 내에서는 다시는 이 깝들이 남도 적당히 선차대 요래 대냠냠들이 남도 죽을 틈지바데 남도 랑을 먹을 때문에 다른 거 생각을 내려고 다시는 그렇지 디마스에서 사제를 놓는 삽제 주다워산데 마세송 공망보소나요 이제 그냥 디마스에 바래 디마스에 바다 딱게 당 선남카데 디제는 디마스에 바래지 남카데 디마스에 바래 세페 남카레지 랑그 생 내록대 달량은 하고성선 들리는 디마스에 바래 디마스에 바래더니 다들 맹다 도대 장다 안 거요래 들이지 하고 거는더니 양 같이 라타는 양 좀 방송 라베 이 마치 파센트상송 그 가디오 가지 남도가 매번 샘나다다 석기 공고는 네 타조 받았어 오늘 그냥 무슨 랍데 출라도 송테레비 대송에 말라만 쳐이도지 띠끼부터들이 다주 띠딱 마삼 제가 되세 그냥 말라가 띠들 못 나는데 띠딱 마삼 샘들 때라 오 요들이 직장 요 말이지 나빠서 그래지 매들은 싸우하고도 하고 싶어 다들 나자 요지요 말이야 이 롱가시는 요는 말이 내가 힘나지 인소 그게 프랑스 받으라서 뭐라는 거 설명을 라베요 말이 내가 차jar 때 또든요 광야민이 때문에 랑 막도던 이모가 속 키워지어 가면 양질이 내 깍들은 이모가 대모가 때 깍들이 랑가스는 쳤대 파스로를 열러 맞대는 때는 그 깍들이 세대다 나카타 차들이 이름들이 이제 서로 돌아와서 이제 돌아서 얘네 돌려 말이야 이제 서로 랑들이 이제 서로 돌아와서 어서 마음 최송도 대선 거요. 이제 공대 법값서더니 무슨 남도 총총 예법값네요. 남도 총총 되다가 라니 소주면은 뜻이 봐요 고송 뜻이 봐요 돼 초와 총총 예법값이 초와들 뭐라 때나 이 초와들 라토고 요래 배나 배네 초당 랍진데 양로 당보 초당 자롱제도 가래셔 이 지금 양따는 것도 제일 공성아 이 초당 랍진들이 이 사톡들 별로 초당 뭐지 송 독진이 돼도 초당 것도 받아 다시를 잘 양들이 남동은 지송해 봐 지송해 봐 대리 등이들이 되게 지서 들지라는 거랑 대식이 뭐요 까는데 띠네들이 사제들이 대식이 못하고 들이랑 다 지들 다 죽은 거죠 별로 대회에 따라서 따로 다 죽지 마지 몸이 양성으로 다 죽어래 저거 다 죽으면 대사들이 네가 충분해야지
So, Dharma friends, yesterday we spoke about the fortress of the view, and So we mentioned in briefly that we are really speaking about the inner experience of the mind, and that is the fortress of the view. So reaching this fortress of the view is to come to a definite conclusion about the nature of the mind that is like indestructible. So again, what is that view? And we have said it is the nature of the mind. That is the view, and it is to resolve that the mind is just like space, and we resolve that on the basis of an actual direct experience of that. So through experience of that view, then the experience becomes of mind being just like space. And so this is how the view is actually ascertained. It is not through an intellectual understanding, but it is through an actual direct experience. So this is also something Milarepa spoke about, and he said that the ultimate view is not ascertained through ordinary verbal conventions, but it has to arise from an actual direct experience. So, for example, there are those who follow the scriptures and logical reasoning. For example, the way the Madhyamaka, the middle way, explains the view. And those who are very intelligent, they can understand it in that way. But also in there it says that the ultimate view, the nature of the mind, is inexpressible. It is beyond words and thoughts. So that really shows that it's not something that can be expressed in words. It can only be experienced. And this is also how we are introduced to teachings of Mahamudra. It is that, for example, it is like a mute person eating molasses. They can experience it, but because they're mute, they cannot tell others what is the taste of molasses. So there are many more quotes like that in the scriptures. But these are all skillful ways of pointing us toward the non-dual experience of the mind. And actually, it is said that there are 3 occasions where anyone naturally comes to the nature of the mind. And it is just, even though the nature of the mind actually arises, it actually becomes clear, we don't usually recognize it. And so these 3 occasions are when you are in the deep sleep state, and second, during sexual union, and third, at death, when the consciousness transfers. And so through skillful means, one can recognize the nature of the mind at those times. And so that is the natural state of the mind in its bare or kind of naked state. And so here we are introduced to it through the lineage of practice and blessings. And so there it says that the true nature of the mind cannot really be understood completely just by means of words. It has to be experienced. And we cannot just follow verbal conventions and terms in order to really understand it. We may understand it on some intellectual level, and we may be able to speak on the nature of the mind, but it is of not much benefit if those words come from a mere intellectual understanding and are not based on a personal experience. So therefore, also Milarepa said, the meditation means that the mind must be imbued with an experience of it. And so we have said there's the fortress of the view, and then second, there is the perilous path of meditation. So first we need to understand the view, and then we need to experience that view. And so that is also explained in our lineage supplication here in Vajrakilaya. And also it says that the thoughts dissolve into the Dharmakaya. When the thoughts dissolve into the Dharmakaya, then that is the enlightened. One sees the enlightened intent of the Buddhas. So these thoughts dissolving in the Dharmakaya. So the thoughts, normally when a thought arises, it generates a feeling. And so that feeling is something where we believe, for example, this is true, this is how something is. And the moment you think that, you are already fixating on your own ideas. Or the other way, you think that whatever it is, it doesn't exist, it's not real. And then you fall into a nihilistic view. And so all of these are verbal conventions. And it's important that when these thoughts arise, that you look at those thoughts, what the thought that arises, the feeling that arises. For example, if a strong feeling of anger arises, actually when you look at the nature of this anger, the anger itself has the power to destroy all the other thoughts. There's no other thought in the mind when you're angry. For example, if you think about like a couple that has been together for like 20, 30 years or so, and they love each other very much, but then one day something happens and they get really angry with each other, and then in that moment, all that love that they had for each other is completely destroyed. And so the anger destroys all other thoughts or feelings in the mind. There's just the anger. Or, for example, those who had devotion to the higher beings before, that devotion is all of a sudden destroyed when they get angry. Or the compassion for sentient beings is destroyed. And some people even think about committing suicide. So now when these thoughts arise within the mind, if you really actually look at that feeling that arises in that very moment, actually there is only this feeling and there is no other thought. So that feeling has kind of pushed aside all the other thoughts. And so then when you really know how to look at that feeling in this moment, then that feeling or that thought dissolves into the Dharmakaya. And so that's the actual experience to be gained. And the experience is gained when you look at the nature of that feeling that arises, the nature of the emotion or the thought that arises. And then actually what you see is like experience is a space like uncompounded nature. Or we mentioned in one of the quotes by the Buddha described it as luminosity, uncompounded, free from elaboration, and peaceful. There are many different quotes on the nature of the mind, but it is like uncompounded space in brief. So the outer space is like an outer example of the inner mind, and the outer space and the inner mind are actually one. The inner mind is uncompounded space. And when we give it a name, like personify it, we call it the Buddha Vajradhara. And so many have spoken on that. Also, Mipam Rinpoche, for instance, is that he said that some people when they have all kinds of thoughts like arising and lack of trust and so forth in the deity. In the moment when they look at that thought, then it is completely cleared away. It becomes cleared by clearly seeing the thought. And then there is no thought left whatsoever. Also in the Ganges Mahamudra, there is one line whereby one can really understand. It is just this one line that will help you really understand this point. And that is, it says, without a single thought, decisively look at your true nature. This is actually also something my guru Jima Dorje used to tell me. To just do that, just think nothing, and then directly just look at the nature of the mind. Also, my father actually introduced me to that. So without a single thought, look at the mind, that feeling that arises. And then none of it will actually be there. if you really look at the mind. It's actually, it is not anything to be seen. And then, however, so what you experience then is that you can't actually say it's there, because when you look, nothing is there. So you can't say there is something, because there isn't. But then you also can't say that there is nothing, because there is actually a clear mind that recognizes whatever arises. It is just something that you cannot express in words. So also it is said that it is, when you look at the mind directly in this way, like a feeling of bliss arises from the midst of your heart, in the space of your heart. And the experience of that is just like a mute person eating molasses. He cannot explain the flavor to others, but he knows the experience of it very clearly. So it is just like that. This is how you need to gain experience. And the experience is gained at the time when very powerful feelings and thoughts arise within the mind. So at that time, you have to look at that feeling, at that thought, look at the mind, instead of looking outward. Whatever object or whatever is causing that feeling, you don't look at that, but you just look at the mind, the feeling itself. And in that moment, it really becomes like space. And this is also what we call as liberation on the ground, or the fundamental liberation, or it is called the primordial liberation. Or also it is called, in the Dzogchen path too, the meeting of the mother and the child luminosity. So when you practice this, even if just a very small thought arises in the mind, whatever arises in the mind, as it is said in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, sustain mindfulness and awareness. So when just even just a small feeling arises, if you look at that feeling clearly, it actually can completely disappear this way. Just like a wave on water. Or first it begins to be like an ice block, and then slowly the ice block melts. And then if you keep practicing this again and again, it melts more and more until it becomes this wave, this water wave. And then in the very end, it becomes, as it is said in the Dzogchen teachings, like I'm drawing a picture on the water. So as you draw something on water, the image disappears together with the drawing simultaneously. And so that is the point then where there is no more fixation on any thought or feeling. And the reason why this can all be accomplished is because you possess Buddha nature. So it is due to the virtue of Buddha nature that you can completely resolve this point. So this is how we experientially resolve the view. So first we have to decide upon the view, the single view, and then the view has to become an actual experience. And so the real decisiveness or ascertaining comes from the direct experience. Anything that is resolved only through an intellectual understanding of words has much less power.
pen meter control o meter patakje maton control de takje ton control tituma control kamera ke simnero kadido ten hatang sawo tampo 차리 요리 바로 보니 매대 파더니 이제 막 상선들이 호로랑이 오들 때더니 배사오들이 예목에 두고 요리 이제들 또 오랜 탐지까지 호로랑이 새들 하하 예 예목에 요리 때더버리 이제 로즈만 뭐 요리 때라고 생각하고 저는 제가 치고나면 그런 거나 배사오 시랑가나 미시선들이 유몽 독지 독연한테 이시래 근데 독지 저를 유몽디 이제 이시를 민지를 유몽 마음이 봐 유몽을 민을 이시래 내가 뭐 찍바래 신토도 마음이 살로만 민을 빼셔 버리 신토 찍바래 데이터도 고아들 민지 가리게 비고는 다다 이제 토그냥 대식 좀 못하리 따왕 좋대 데이터와 대시 예슬 이게 조금 와서 이 강하고 고요 말이 니보 강하고 말 초자 보소 이거를 뭐 소라지를 박차도 거는 지대에서 거기서 이 미칠 컨트롤할 때 소화된 마가가 돼 어디 시랑랑 소된 정말 성상 안 파서들이 안 맞게 통한 양시랑 졸래본 거리 다 마상을 요 때문에 시당시 받는 거니 내려도 하고서 상승선에 따리 미디 안니 미만을 민하고 통거 말이 때랑 생을 빼는 너무 뭐라 하다가 수탐서라고 나와 셈들이 다니 코가 셈는 아이 셈인지 같이 모르지 코도 몰라 나도 모르지 옛날 때들이 코 뉴모 나 뉴모 버지 이 고미 작은 나 뉴모 나한테 니지 나 남이지 니지 코 탐만 말이지 혼인지에다 코스는 혼마 민바리마 민요를 베리 민스리 마민들이 나야 탐만 잡고 봐리 대라고서 나가잖아 그만 답리들이 돼 랑냠니지 들이제 걸 니게 있지 마타데 대자리 컨트롤이 따를 매반도 들들 저세 이제 소리다 들이 돈이 니 사와스는 상관없네 제로로서 봐 투당제 본동서 누가 담아 참치를 주발 들이정 거래 주부진다 누가 누지 담제 주부진다래 폐 담아서 삼부진다래 제탐제 삼바도 양자 되게 삼바체비 봐 양의 공부도 누가 하면 주반 패기도 니가 저버리 배야고도 상 센터가 됐잖아 되니 강강의 요말 들고 번 상태가 좋노래 또 어디 뉴디냐니 이 초아 생들 대마디 대탁게 다 거래 이 제당들 랑이 ramlata 깨끗이 상도거래 김보로 이제 짜증 답과 메스 와신데서 데이터 메다 버싱게 배연을 가래 나로 비시게 잡는 막 손발에 20m 청년은 전부 메소 양양요 진식급 정신이 뭐 소화도 생기든가 박차도 올려오나 이 세드 주면도 원래 책토가 맞아 이제는 다리 좋아도 생기 돌아 내려오던이잖아. 내려고 또 그때 대식 좀 해보다고. 좋아도 이 매만도 그래. 소소할 때 냠이 저거는 로도. 내 말이 내가도 뭐 봐. 내려더니 양양을 내서 소소서 봐도 뭐 매가 차그래. 그래서 냠이 제일 됐다고 그래. 냠이 제 냠용제가 돼. 냠이 지는 그냥 도토도 없지. 내가 대식 좀 보여봤다 그랬지. 대식 뭐콩 대모신 다 그랬지. 냠이 와서 막 냠이 맞춰가 레로에 와서 주나. 즈바지 사람들이 즈마랑 거 보는다. 정진이제 서정이었던 남자의 세미가 이제는 다 서정이는 못 보는 세미중 데이터를 쌓아놓던 데 냠이잖아. 그리고 그 창초야 요래면 창진은 어떡하는 거는 나도 뭐 집착할 사람은 당하면 손을 받으려는 공장에서 이제 창조법을 데이터를 찾아내는 데이터 곰 창조라는 게 냠농스는 거 그래. 예민해 속만하니 데레 소소다 강양무시 다기 곰이 야마시 데레 대마도 락디 강양 요 말이 주방하래 요 말이 사방하래 요 말이 야 곰냠농지 참라데 참라년인가요 말 그 생活 쪽을 타고 되는 보고 통들이 되게 고갑전에 랑가서 냠냠게 배하고 문이잖아 팽도 없어. 이때 팽록 대다를 문이란 게 냠이 제일 팽거리 20m 총을 매 총총도 뜨나 나혼자 버리 총총도 들이들이 가리죠. 들 매체 동시 그런 독박이 자꾸나 제로 제거래. 그 양대한테 매체 보잖아. 그 강의 자고 말이지. 참아 책서고 자고 저고요. 맥사와 참아 대토고 대라고 공부하기는데 고번 창조지 바데 또 중국어 그래. 다음 오시고 그래. 다음 오시지 거. 깨마선라도 줄었어. 다음 거를 못 진데서 말이. 내가 얘기를 좋아해서 님은 정말 똑바 제셔요. 무슨 지주 로이쯤을 줬어. 무슨 말이지? 내가 사는 것도 지야 맞췄어. 태가 봐줘지. 독실 특종들 홍 똑바가서 홍공거리다 들어. 사실 홍공 독실 백dak 요리. 가서 딱 똑바로 참 쪼거리. 참 쪼대다 내다 보면인데 그래서 홍공지 딱 홍디 용디만 뭐 줄더니 산지 탐지 뭔가 홍을 배 내가 홍지가 똑같아 빼나 드발랑나 이 처아들 홍공나 한 드발이 저거 양 올라오면서 보는 좀더 깍들이 참주 저거지 이 보아는 홍그 고그 까들 성인데 이제 까자가 고다 까운게 되는 종이지 뭐 주발 홍보는 로마요 말이 고요는 로마지 요 말이 때려때리고 고지 까록때려때 남아 기복을 하좀 사보선 거예요. 홍보서도 홍계에서는 아니거든. 로니요 말이 딱지를 손이 아니 보면 랩로 그래. 되는 나도 배송 대다지 대탐지 고반냥 명도 들어가서 이런 게 냥 강시 같은 저도인데 시와이 다다 또 냠냠고래스 냠냠고 대지는 이놈의 식성 대무티는 아니 식마성 밤이 밤에 대하고 대냠냠 때리다 사람이 그 라진이가 돈이 적구나 돈 담고 때마다 나와구나 상계 희바지 끼끼끼 상계 깝되는 집마다 파 상소는 이 샘나 받아도 돼요. 자반 제주나 끼끼끼 적상기 끼끼끼 네 셉단지 송 대다버리 상기에 마음만 상기에 말이 다다른 상기 내가 하고 샘나 받아도 차서 언제 받아 파송 샘나 받아도 차도 없이 이 비슷하지 본도 된다고 해야지.
So the overcoming this perilous path of meditation, we can overcome the perilous path of meditation through experience. So first of all, we have to understand the view, and then we have to experience it directly. So it should become an ongoing, continuous experience. So when a very strong thought arises, a very powerful affliction arises, in that moment, so the experience to be gained is that when you recognize it with mindfulness, then this thought is lost. Then the affliction goes away. Otherwise, if you're unmindful, then you become controlled by the affliction, and then you will not cross this perilous path of meditation, but instead fall into the abyss. So you fall off the cliff on that dangerous path. And basically that means, this abyss means that then you will experience suffering. If you cannot cross the perilous path of meditation, you will experience suffering. And so therefore we have to overcome the perilous path of meditation. And first, you should recognize the more coarse thoughts of afflictive emotions when they arise. For example, you get really angry at somebody. Then don't look at the person who made you angry, but look at the anger itself. Meditate with the anger and look at the nature of the anger. when you look at the nature of the anger, you will see the mind is extremely clear in this moment. Because in this moment, when you're completely overtaken by anger, then there is no other thought within the mind. There's just the anger. And actually, there's many stories of like realized masters who have said that after, when they get angry and then they look at the anger, and first they get really angry and suddenly they start out laughing. And that is actually, that's what happens when you really see the nature of anger. Because of this clarity to it, you will be able to spontaneously begin to laugh. So when strong anger arises, the mind is very clear. And in that moment, look at the mind, look at the anger. So generally speaking, we say that the affliction is like poison, but it also is primordial awareness. It is just when the mind is in an immature state, then it is an affliction. But when the mind matures, then it actually is primordial wisdom, primordial awareness. And the essence is actually the same of the affliction and of primordial wisdom. It is just like, for example, if you want to eat an unripe apple, you really can't eat that. It doesn't taste good. But when you eat a ripe apple, it's really tasty. So this is how you can understand it. It's still the same apple, just one is ripe and one is unripe. So how you ripen, how you mature the mind, it is by first recognizing the view, which we have said can be recognized especially during these three occasions. But all that need to be done is to recognize just the view, the natural state of the mind. There's nothing else that needs to be done. There is no other special method or antidote. It is also called the king that cuts through everything. So that it is that feeling that you work with, the imprint. And in a Samantabhadra prayer, it says, gradually these imprints grow stronger and thicker. So first you get angry at someone, and then it leaves this negative feeling in your mind. And so then the person goes away and you forget about it, and then you think that I'm no longer angry at that person. But then the next time you see the person again, the anger comes again, the negative feeling comes right back. So at that time you have therefore not yet liberated the anger. So when it arises, really look at the essence, the nature of that anger. And then what you also recognize through this clarity is that the person you're angry at also actually doesn't really exist. Eventually, you will not even see a really existing person. It is more like you are a tree trunk and the person is like a branch or something like that. You're connected to that person because all appearances, we have said, all our perceptions are our own mind. So then you will feel that my mind and his mind are actually one and the same. We are all connected, just like the branches on a tree. And also our afflictive emotions are one and the same. And however, I am a practitioner. I meditate. And he's just an ordinary person, so I should feel compassion for him. He's immature, but I have matured, and I'm not an ordinary person, so I'm not acting like one. If I start to get afflicted about this person, then I'm just like that, then I just become an ordinary person. So thinking in this way, you should kind of encourage yourself to practice. And also when you feel compassion for the other person, then immediately the anger will be gone. And then also, of course, when you come to the natural state of the mind. So also it is said that like to those who really recognize that, then all the obstacles and the demons and obstructors are actually an enhancement to one's practice. So all those who do harm are We call them the benefactors of patience. All those who trigger your anger are your benefactors of patience. And all those who help you and who are beneficial, they are your benefactors of love. So both are your friends. And so think that my friend who helps me a lot is my benefactor of love, and through that friend, I will increase my love more and more. So it becomes immeasurable love. And those who do harm are my benefactor of patience. Through them, my patience increases more and more. So they both are good. And if you see it in this way, then no matter which one that person is, that person will not create, the situation will not create any difficulty in your mind. And this is how you will overcome or cross the perilous path of meditation and not fall into the abyss. So you have to really examine the feelings that arise in the mind and see if those feelings really actually are gone, or if they are still somewhere remaining, staying in the mind. For example, when you get angry. So ideally, when you get angry, you clear it away in just an instant, the moment it arises. Also, Khenpo Rinpoche had said that it is just like setting a light on fire, a heap of brass. It becomes incinerated in an instant. Or it is like this example with wood and fire. For example, the consort Niguma said to Naropa that one should nurture this small spark of awareness over and over again through mindfulness. So this awareness is like a spark of fire in the beginning, or mindfulness is like a spark of fire. And in the beginning, it can only burn away the smaller feelings and imprints in the mind. It cannot burn away like larger logs of wood yet. And so you start slowly with the smaller thoughts, and gradually the fire of awareness burns away more and more wood. So the fire then becomes stronger and stronger. And that is all due to the power of your own Buddha nature. And so eventually it becomes a blazing fire that can burn away any object, any piece of wood or any object. And then all the feelings will really go away on their own. So then the experience that you gain is then you know that, when I really try hard to practice, then actually it goes away. But if I don't practice, and if I allow the afflictive emotion to remain in the mind, then I feel miserable. So that's the experience to be gained. And so you know that when I practice, I can actually become liberated. And that's actually a sign of your Buddha nature. And that just needs to be developed. And then you also know that if I don't practice, if I'm too lazy, then I just continue to follow my thoughts and my perceptions. And then that leads to grasping at the true existence of appearances. So then the inner perceiving mind connects completely to the outer grasped at or perceived object. And then the problem that comes from that is that you will begin to believe in the true concrete existence of what you perceive and also your ideas about it. So when we overcome the perilous path of meditation, the experience that you need to gain is that to recognize these thoughts and feelings when they arise, and to see the difference on what happens when I meditate and what happens when I do not meditate. When I meditate, then the feeling really goes away. So this is how you experience the path, a perilous path of meditation. And it's just, as we mentioned before, as Milarepa said, the meditation has to become an actual experience. And that is all that needs to be known. Even if you don't know anything else, if you don't know all kinds of elaborate practices or meditations, that is actually sufficient. So, for example, I myself am not someone who has done extensive retreats and has extensive experience or has done a lot of learning and studying at all. It is just have gained this personal experience. And I was also fortunate that as a young boy, I was introduced to just that. That all that I need to do is just look after my mind, just look at my mind. There's nothing else really to be done. But I gained this experience and it really helped me. So I'm passing on the experience because I find that if you experience it too, it will be of great benefit. So you have to nurture this small spark of fire, of awareness. And eventually, this small spark of fire turns into a large fire, and it can burn away all kinds of wood and all various objects. And eventually, then, when your awareness becomes like a blazing fire, then it does not require any more difficulty. Then it will just naturally burn away anything that comes into contact with it. So then, just naturally, you will let go of all thoughts and all kinds of thoughts and feelings. So this is when you have crossed the perilous path of meditation. So again, first, for the view, to recognize the view, you just have to remember this one line and do not, without a single thought, decisively look at your true nature. Also, Guru Rinpoche had said, whatever mental objects arise in the mind, the 5 afflictive emotions and so on, do not hold them to be true, and look at them directly, and then they will go away. So in this way you are directly cutting through the thoughts. This is also the method of the Drupchö, or the cutting through practice of the Dzogchen. So whatever thought arises, or for example, you can think of the Hung. In Mahamudra, we think of the Hung. In Dzogchen, we let out a pet. But these syllables have the power to instantly stop the thinking mind. But especially for beginning practitioners, it's very good to meditate on the Hung again and again. The Hung has many great qualities. It is said that if you just meditate on the Hung, it is like meditating on all the Buddhas. So when the thought arises in the mind, and this obscuration arises in the mind, of a feeling, and you think of the Hung, then that feeling will go away. And so you will gain an actual experience. And also, along with the Hung, for example, in the context of Poba practice, the transference of consciousness, we are, for example, blocking the lower entrances of the body with the Hung syllable, so that the consciousness does not leave from there, and so that the consciousness is directed to the crown through the central channel. So there is also a method, but then actually, when you really recognize, when you just meditate on the Hung, then in that moment, actually, there is no duality of a door and then someone who goes through that door, like the consciousness. So if you meditate only on the Hung, then even though there might be a door, there is still no one to go through a door. There is no consciousness that exists anywhere inherently. Actually, this was also a point that Ken Rinpoche had explained in a very profound way. So mainly, it is that there is no real traveler. There is no real consciousness, no one who really goes. And if you recognize that, then actually you will naturally go into the central channel. So this is just a kind of personal experience of meditation. I'm just really sharing my own experiences with you, Dharma friends. And that's the main point. The main point is to gain an experience, to really experience that, oh, now I was able to let go of this affliction. Or now when I do this, I'm able to let go of the affliction. But when I do that, then I'm not able to let go of the affliction. So this is what you need to recognize. And this is exactly what we call the experience of meditation. And also this is what accomplishes the twofold purpose of others and oneself. And this is also what makes one realize the ultimate truth in an instant. It is that in an instant, in any given moment, you can be a complete Buddha. So that is when all grasping thoughts are cleared away and the mind becomes like space. In that moment, the mind really, that is really Buddha. This is also mentioned in the Manjushri Namasangiti. In an instant, you are a Buddha. In an instant, you are samsaric sentient being. So when we speak about enlightenment, it's not like in the future you will be enlightened and so on. And it is not. It is now in the present moment that you are enlightened. So there is no anticipation of the future, and there is no memory of the past. So this is the skillful way to overcome the perilous path of meditation. There is no past, and there is no future enlightenment. Enlightenment happens right now, in the present moment, when you see the space-like nature of the mind. And when all grasping is cleared away, then the mind will be in its natural happy state.
Roku meeting drawing ye just only. You can check Kashi. That is some sorry. Take meeting drawing ye just a tamala pin, knock it or tails on minds about bones or matching body must answer. That in my dungeon were.
There is about this. There are a few quotes by Thigden Sumgen. I remembered a few of them. So I'm going to mention 3 of them. So the first one is that even though you have merged your mind non-dually with the Guru, still continue to practice devotion. Even though all confusion of dualistic perception has become purified in your mind, still continue to cultivate an altruistic mind. And even though you have gained transcended arising and cessation, still you continue and you have engaged in many great activities. You continue to be humble, because otherwise, we get prideful and we think that, I have done this or I have done that, and then still there is this grasping at the me. So even though we do great things, we continue to abandon the grasping at the self.
Om Vajrakilaya sarva vignam vam hombe. 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 From the mantra garland light rays and the second mantra garland issue forth. passing from my mouth into the mouth of the consort. The self-resounding mantra proclaimed by the inconceivable dakas and dakinis in the consort for chakras arouses the mainstream. From the consort secret place the mantra garland enters my vajra, and the deities residing within my channels proclaim the sound of the mantra. The mantra garland then dissolves into my heart. I visualize this uninterruptedly. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Hokatam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite Aparajite Marasena Pramardani Sarva Bignam Bam Humpe. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Hokatam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardaniye sarva bignam bam humpet. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardaniye sarva bignam bam humpet. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardani sarva bignam bam humpe. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardani sarva bignam bam humpe. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardani sarva bignam bam humpe. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardani sarva bignam bam humpe. Om Vajrakilaya Jahumbam Katam Kate Jaya Vijaya Ajite aparajite marasena pramardani sarva bignam bam humpe. Om a I u ri li li I o am a kaka gaganga cha cha ja janya tata datana tata datana papa bapama yara lava shasha saka aksha a I u ri li I o am a kaka gaganga cha cha ja janya tata datana Papa Bapama Yara Lava Shasha Sahaksha I u Lili I o am Kaka Gaganga Chacha Jajanya Kaka Tatana Papa Bapama Yara Lava Shasha Sahaksha Svaha. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dhanopa Tishtadrida Me Pava Sutoshyo Me Pava Supashyo Me Pava Anurakto Me Pava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shriyam Kuru Hom Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajrama Me Munju Vajrikava Mahasamaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dhanopa Tishtadrida Me Pava Sutoshyo Me Pava Supashyo Me Pava Anurakto Me Pava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayacha Sarva Karma Sucha Me Chitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramane Munja Vajribhav Mahasamaya Sattva Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Trinopa Tishtadrido Nipava Sutoshyo Nipava Suposhyo Nipava Anurakto Nipava Sarva Siddhi Mitraya Cha Sarva Karma Suchane Chitam Shriyam Guru Paha Paha Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramane Munja Vajribhava Mahasamaya Sattva Om Yadharma Hetu Prabhava Hetun Tesham Tathagato Yavadat Teshem Chayo Nirodha Evam Vade Mahashramana Yadharma Hetu Prabhava Hetun Tesham Tathagato Yavadat Teshem Chayo Nirodha Evam Vade Mahashramana Yadharma Hetu Prabhava Hetun Tesham Tathagato Yavadat Teshem Chayo Nirodha Evam Vade Mahashramana Sva Glorious great Vajrakilaya and divine court, please come here. I make out the inner unseen offerings. I praise your body, speech, mind, qualities, activities. I confess transgressions, heedlessness, and confusions, vows and broken, lovingly consider me with compassion and please grant accomplishments to me. Gurus, knowledge holders, deities, dakinis, and those bound once gathered like clouds in the sky. Through the power of your pasamaya, please consider us with love and shower down great blessings upon this mandala and us yogi. Pledge you blessings of all victors on us bring.
Vajrakilaya sarva bhakti bhave Vajrakilaya sarva bhakti bhave Vajrakilaya sarva bhakti bhave Om Vajrakilaya Swamini Bhave. Siba, yeah.